They didn't leave because of you. You need to hear that before anything else. Because if someone disappeared from your life without a word, without a fight, without even the dignity of a goodbye, your brain has almost certainly spent months constructing a case against yourself. Replaying conversations, searching for the turning point, wondering what you said, what you missed, what you could have done differently. And the answer your brain keeps landing on is something. It must have been something. It wasn't. And if you're the one who disappeared, if you're the one who one day simply stopped answering, stopped showing up, stopped being reachable by anyone in your life at once, you probably already sensed that it wasn't really about them. But knowing that hasn't made it easier to explain. Because how do you put words to something you barely understand yourself? How do you justify a disappearance that had no single cause, no dramatic moment, no clear beginning? That's exactly what this is about. Not the screaming match, not the falling out with a clear villain and a clean ending. The quieter version, the person who becomes slowly, completely unreachable, who retreats from every relationship simultaneously, not just one friendship that soured, not just one family member who crossed a line, but everyone, all at once, without announcement, without explanation, without even the courtesy of a final conversation. They don't block people, they don't make it a moment, they just gradually stop being there, and then one day you realize they've been gone for months, and you can't identify the exact moment it happened. What is actually going on inside a person when they do that? Here's what most people miss entirely. The person who cuts everyone off is almost never the dramatic one in the room. They are not the one who makes scenes or picks fights or issues ultimatums. They are, almost without exception, the opposite. They are the capable one, the steady one, the person others called in a crisis because they always seem to know what to do, the one who held space for everyone else's chaos while quietly managing their own in the background, in the dark, behind closed doors, in the car, on the way home from being everything to everyone. They gave, consistently, generously, sometimes excessively, not always because it felt natural, but because somewhere along the way, giving became the shape of their identity in every relationship they had. They were the helper, the listener, the one who showed up. And they were so reliable at it, so consistent, that nobody ever stopped to ask if the role was costing them something. Think about that for a moment. When was the last time someone asked that person, the one who always had answers, always had bandwidth, always had time for your problems? When was the last time someone asked them how they were actually doing? Not the polite version, not "how are you" as punctuation. A real question, with real patience for a real answer. The honest answer is probably almost never, or so long ago it stopped mattering. And here's the psychology underneath all of it. People who cut everyone off are almost never responding to a single overwhelming event. It is not one thing. It is never one thing. It is the accumulation. It is the slow, invisible compounding of carrying something heavy. Grief, burnout, shame, a quiet identity crisis that has no clean name, a life that drifted far from anything that felt like theirs, while simultaneously being the person everyone around them depends on. And the brutal math of that situation is this: the heavier the thing they are carrying inside, the more exhausting the performance of being okay becomes on the outside. Because that is what connection starts to feel like at a certain point. Not comfort, not belonging, performance. Every phone call requires them to be the version of themselves that other people are used to. Every dinner, every catch-up, every casual "let's hang out" demands they show up as the person they have always been in that relationship. Reliable, grounded, fine. And when what you are carrying inside bears no resemblance to the person expected on the outside, that gap is not just uncomfortable. It is exhausting in a way that is almost impossible to describe to someone who hasn't lived inside it. It is the exhaustion of being fluent in a language you no longer feel you speak, of translating yourself constantly for every room you walk into, of performing a version of yourself so consistently that you begin to lose track of where the performance ends, and you begin. So what does a person like that do? They don't ask for help, and this is critical. This explains almost everything about why the disappearance happens the way it does. People who cut everyone off are almost always people who never truly learned how to ask for what they need. Not because they lack self-awareness, not because they are weak, but because somewhere early, in childhood, in formative relationships, in the family system they grew up inside, Needing something and not receiving it became such a repeated experience that the need itself started to feel like a liability. They learned, at some level, that expressing a need led to disappointment, or burden, or the uncomfortable shift of being the one who needed something instead of the one who provided it. And so they stopped. They internalized. They got exceptionally good at managing everything alone and presenting as fine when they were anything but. For years, that strategy works. They function, they show up, they give, and the people around them, without meaning any harm, allow it, because it is convenient to have someone reliable, because it is easy to accept that someone is okay when they keep insisting that they are. Until the day the insisting becomes impossible. The moment of withdrawal is rarely a decision. It does not feel like a choice being made. It feels like a body finally refusing to do something it has been forced to do for far too long. Like a muscle that has been held tense for years, finally releasing, not by choice, but by failure. One day, the thought of answering a single message feels genuinely beyond what is available. One day, the idea of explaining where they have been feels more costly than the silence. One day, and this is the part that confuses everyone, including the person experiencing it, being completely alone feels like the first honest breath they have taken in longer than they can remember. And that relief is real. Don't underestimate it. The disappearance feels like relief before it ever feels like loneliness. And because it feels like relief, because the absence of performance feels like rest, the person experiencing it does not immediately identify it as a problem. They identify it as survival. They are not wrong. Something in them had reached a genuine limit. Something needed to stop. The withdrawal, for all the damage it eventually causes, begins as an honest response to an honest threshold being crossed. But here's the painful truth underneath even that. They are solving the wrong problem. The real problem was never the relationships. The real problem is that they had been performing closeness for so long in so many relationships that they had slowly lost the ability to tell the difference between being present and being truly known. They were around people constantly, but they were not seen by them, not really, because being seen requires showing someone what you are actually carrying. And they had never done that, not fully, not with anyone. So the connection was real on the surface and hollow at the center. And the hollow center is what finally became unbearable. Not the people, but the distance between who they were being and who they actually were. Now consider what this looks like from the outside. The people left behind experience this as abandonment. They replay conversations. They search for a turning point that isn't there. They send messages that go unanswered and construct elaborate theories about what they must have done. Their grief is real. Their confusion is valid. But it is aimed at the wrong source, because the person who disappeared never gave them access to the real weight. They only ever showed the managed version, the capable version, the version with no visible needs. You cannot mourn a person's limits if they never let you see them. And this is the quiet tragedy at the center of all of it. Both people are lost. The one who disappeared is trying to survive something they don't have language for. The one left behind is grieving a loss they cannot locate a reason for. And neither of them has enough information to bridge what opened between them, because the information was never shared. It was protected, hidden, managed away. What does it actually take for someone who has disappeared like this to find their way back? It does not start with an apology. That is too late in the sequence. It starts, slowly and imperfectly, with the person who withdrew beginning to understand what they were protecting themselves from. Because the withdrawal was protection. Isolating, costly, damaging protection, but protection nonetheless. And you do not undo protection by demanding vulnerability before safety exists. That is not how a nervous system works. That is not how trust is rebuilt after it has collapsed inward. What actually creates movement, slowly, without guarantees, is the experience of connection that does not demand performance. A relationship where they are not required to immediately explain or justify the absence before being allowed back. A door that remains open without conditions attached to walking through it. And for the person who disappeared, the internal work is something they have probably never done before. It is learning that needing something does not make them a burden. It is sitting with the discomfort of being known, actually known, not just liked, not just useful, and discovering that the world does not collapse under the weight of their honesty. That someone can hear what they are carrying and not leave, not shut down, not require them to take it back. That sounds like a small thing. It is not a small thing. For someone who learned early that their inner world was too much, or not enough, or simply irrelevant, being genuinely received by another person is not a small thing. It is, for many of them, entirely new. The shift does not come from grand reconciliations. It comes from small moments of honesty that don't end in disappointment, from saying something real and not being punished for it, from discovering that connection just once can feel like rest instead of labor. That is the whole thing. That single discovery changes the entire equation. But here is what I want you to carry with you after this. The person who cut everyone off was not broken when they did it. They were not selfish. They were not cold. They were full. Completely, invisibly, silently full of everything they had absorbed for everyone else over years, with nowhere left to put any of it, and no practiced way of asking for help carrying it. The disappearance was not a statement about the people they left behind. It was the only language available to someone who had run out of all the others. And if you are still waiting for them, they may not be gone. They may simply still be learning that there is a way to come back that does not require them to pretend the wait was never there.